Upcoming nominating contests this week include Wisconsin, Washington State, and Hawaii, and all eyes are looking to March 4th, when the delegate-rich states Texas and Ohio hold their primaries. But neither candidate is expected to win the 2,025 delegates that are needed to clinch the nomination before the end of the voting season. And it's all coming down to superdelegates, the nearly 800 former elected office holders and party officials who are technically free to choose whichever candidate they like. While Obama leads in the overall delegate count and among pledged delegates, Clinton has more superdelegates supporting her. According to an analysis by the New York Times, about 300 of the 795 superdelegates have yet to take sides, and both campaigns are in a heated battle to win their support. In fact, many of the superdelegates have already been plied with campaign contributions by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. This according to a new study by the Center for Responsive Politics. For more, I'm joined in Washington, D.C. by Massey Rich, Communications Director for the Center for Responsive Politics. Rob Ritchie is also with us. He's the Executive Director of Fair Vote. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Massey Rich, let's begin with you. Explain the money trail.
Well, what we did, Amy, was look back to 2005 and the 2006 election cycle and take a look at the contributions that Clinton and Obama have made to the superdelegates, who are also elected officials themselves and have re-election campaigns, election campaigns that they have to raise money for. And what we found is that since then, Clinton and Obama have contributed about $900,000 to these superdelegates. Then we've also found an interesting correlation that you could predict with about 80% certainty which candidate the superdelegates would endorse based on how much money they'd gotten in campaign contributions from them.
Can you explain why are the candidates giving these delegates money?
Well, I think what they were doing was giving other Democrats money. I don't think they were thinking of them as superdelegates at the time, because we're talking about the last election cycle for the most part. But that's what politicians do to get each other elected and reelected. I mean, it's one way that you build relationships and introduce yourself to the rest of the team. You're expected to support each other. And when you have money in your campaign coffers and someone else is in need of money in theirs, there's often a transfer, a contribution made to help them out. And then the expectation is that the favor will be repaid somehow down the road. And
just to be clear, who the superdelegates are, they're all current members of Congress?
Well, they're not all current members of Congress, but the ones that we were looking at were the elected officials, current members of Congress who are Democrats, state governors, and then the rest of the superdelegates are party officials.
Senators?
Excuse me?
Senators as well?
Well, yes, senators and House members, but then there are party officials who just might be the chair of the state Democratic Party in Nebraska or something like that.
Has money been given since the last election to these superdelegates?
You mean in the year 2007?
In 2007 and 2008.
Or 2008. Yes, there has been some money, but when a presidential candidate officially announces that they're running for president, then they generally have to make their political action committee, where a lot of this money comes from, go dormant. So the money was really mostly in 2005 and 2006. We found that Barack Obama in total gave far more of it than Hillary Clinton. His total was close to $700,000 to the superdelegates. Hers was about $200,000 to them.
And how many people did each give the money to?
The total was a bit over 100, and about half of them have already endorsed. Obama was giving, as you can imagine, from the higher dollar amount to many more superdelegates than to Clinton. But I think you also have to remember that at the time, she was a known quantity. She was a brand name that everyone in the Democratic Party knew. He was just coming onto the scene nationally, and I'm sure had in mind the idea that he might run for president. And so he was introducing himself around the Democratic Party, whereas that was something that she didn't really need to do as much of.
Just looking at your report, the universe of undecided superdelegates includes 46 members of Congress who have received a total of $333,900 in contributions from the Political Action Committee set up by Senator Obama.
And we should predict, I mean, based on what we've seen with the others, that about 80% of those will go with Obama if it comes down to this at the convention.
Rob Ritchie, explain overall, again, who superdelegates are and how they were set up?
Well, superdelegates, I don't really like that term. It conveys something positive, and I guess I'm not against elected officials and party leaders, but they're unpledged delegates that have been designated a secure seat at the convention with a vote in the first round of voting there. It's about a fifth of the total. So we're talking about around 800 people, and it does include all of the members of Congress who are Democrats, except Joe Lieberman, who's in that quasi, not really a Democrat status. Then a lot of party leaders and a lot of people who represent certain constituencies like labor unions. And they got their current status after the 1980 election when Jimmy Carter won the nomination running as an incumbent against Ted Kennedy, who a lot of the party leaders favored. And that happened after Carter had won in '76 as an outsider and George McGovern won in '72 as at least as a semi-outsider, which had flowed after a lot of changes were made after the '68 election and the controversial nomination there. So there was kind of a backlash to sort of too much democracy within the party or too much sway for what happens at these primaries and caucuses. And in 1982,
yeah, I can hear you just fine.
There was a convention that the midterm convention where they made some changes to add the superdelegates to the process.
And the whole Hart-Mondale debate, how do they fit in there?
Well, Walter Mondale had been Carter's vice president and, of course, very well connected within the party. Gary Hart was an outsider, and the superdelegates en masse essentially came forward early for Mondale and made it clear that Hart, even while he could win New Hampshire and some of the early votes, was facing an uphill battle. And you can see it right now when they do the tallies and they add the superdelegates into the tallies, even though they're not pledged, you know, so that whatever commitments they make are just on paper and something that could change. But when you see someone with more delegates in just the general tally, it gives them a sense of being the front runner and a different kind of status. And I think it's very problematic for the party this year. And I think what I hope it also draws attention to in a more broad sense is that a lot of the ways that the delegates get pledged, a lot of the contests that are going on, are also not very democratic. And there's a lot of things that the party needs to do, I think, to make this nomination process more welcoming to people and fairer. And the superdelegates, in some ways, is the tip of a big iceberg.
You have a lot of interesting issues that are raised. For example, the majority of the superdelegates are white, and if the popular vote or even the delegates go to Obama, but the superdelegates override the sentiment of the electorate, that raises a very significant issue. Also, Congressman John Lewis was quoted in the New York Times last week saying, although he committed to Hillary Clinton, has endorsed her, that at the convention he would switch to Obama.
No, I think we're going to see a lot of that, and I think that in some ways what I hope we begin to see is a recognition that with these two candidates, it would be way too explosive for the superdelegates to come in and determine the election, to pick the winner in a way that might trump what happened in the process. I think what we'll also see is a lot of complaints from whoever doesn't win the majority during the pledge delegate process can point to a lot of problems with the current way that it's done and make a case for their own candidacy. But I think if right now the superdelegates begin to move towards saying, look, we have two strong candidates with strong bases of support, and it'd be way too controversial for us to come in as unpledged delegates and to change what the pledged delegates are doing, makes a lot of sense to me as for the party. Because otherwise here, after the wake of the controversial, ugly elections of 2000 and 2004 for president, where the Democrats had so many justifiable complaints with the process, to come in and give any sense that the elections don't count as much as what unelected people say, I think would be very problematic. And I should say that a lot of these people are elected, but they weren't elected as delegates, and that's their problem, I think, is sort of making a decisive choice.
Explain the difference.
Well, they include so many people who have been elected state governors and members of Congress so that they have won, but they didn't win their place as delegates. So that in the process that's been chosen and agreed to for this year, which includes a lot of problematic practices like caucuses where 2% of the voters turn out, and these strange ways of allocating delegates in different congressional districts that don't lead to very fair results and so on. Whatever process has been chosen, that is the agreed upon rules for determining who's going to get more pledged delegates. And so that means there's some kind of electoral process for picking those people. And that then these other delegates are at the convention having a first round vote without having gone through that process. That's what I mean by they're sort of unelected to that position of being able to pick the nominee.
Didn't Donna Brazile say, she's the former Al Gore campaign manager who is a